Welcome to another engaging episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. Today, we're talking about understanding unseen challenges. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I sincerely hope you enjoy this thought-provoking journey into the world of disabilities, mental health, and the power of authenticity. In this episode, I am joined by an incredible guest, Aunia Kahn, who offers a unique and heartfelt perspective on these often misunderstood and underrepresented topics. Through her personal experiences, Aunia sheds light on the significance of empathy, understanding, and inclusivity, challenging us to look beyond what meets the eye. We explore the concept of invisible disabilities, emphasizing that many individuals, like Aunia herself, face challenges that aren't immediately visible to the outside world. This conversation aims to bridge the gap of misunderstanding and provide a platform for individuals dealing with invisible disabilities to be heard and seen. Aunia's passionate advocacy for normalizing the representation of disabled individuals in various aspects of life really underscores the importance of treating everyone with disabilities as full-fledged human beings. We discuss the power of respectful conversations, offering assistance with consent, and the beauty of embracing authenticity in our interactions. We sidebar to dive into the wisdom that children can offer us when it comes to approaching individuals with disabilities, and offer some insights that highlight how children's candid questions and innate curiosity can inspire adults to engage in open, honest, and compassionate dialogues. We also explore the vital aspects of self-care and self-acceptance, exploring Aunia's personal routines and strategies for maintaining balance. Her message is clear. Even on challenging days, extending kindness to oneself and seeking help when needed are crucial steps in our journey towards self-improvement. As we wrap up this episode, I hope you carry with you a powerful message. Authenticity is key to connecting with others, and there will always be someone out there who appreciates and connects with your unique, authentic self. Aunia's words encourage us to let go of comparisons and focus on being our best in the present moment, understanding that our best can evolve from day to day. So enough for me, let's dive into this enlightening conversation with Aunia and explore the world of disabilities, mental health, and the incredible strength that lies in being authentic. Stay tuned for an episode that will challenge your perspectives and inspire you to create a more compassionate and understanding world. Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. I am so excited for our conversation tonight. We're going to be talking about thriving with disabilities. You'll probably see me swipe at my eyes a couple of times because I once again let my 9-year-old pick my makeup, and he picked this eyeshadow color that has the most fallout I have ever seen in an eyeshadow. It's insane. So there's glitter all over my eyes. Or I'm crying. It's one of the two, and you'll never know which it is. So I am very excited for our conversation tonight. I think it's going to be wonderful. We do have a question queue open. If you have questions for our guest tonight, who I'm going to introduce here in just a minute, feel free to pop those into the chat, and I will make sure to address them, !Q, and then follow up with your question, and I'll make sure that we get it asked here and make it part of the conversation. So Aunia Kahn is my guest tonight. Aunia, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Well, thank you. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Aunia Kahn is the CEO of Rise Visible. With 24 years in the industry, she's a highly sought after digital marketer, strategist, and designer and public speaker. Rise Visible was named a top ranking woman-owned digital agency by Clutch and is a certified disability-owned business enterprise. Kahn is also an internationally renowned artist and photographer and has been in over 300 exhibitions in 10 different countries. And she founded Create for Healing, which is the host of the Rise Above, Be Visible podcast, and has been featured on Yahoo, Prevention Magazine, Authority Magazine, Entrepreneur, on Fire. She also identified as a disabled business owner in STEM, surviving and thriving with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, MCAS, dysautonomia.
That's right.
Yes, POTS, PTSD. Yes, that one's a hard one. I've got a bunch of socials, so if you are interested in connecting with Aunia, feel free to pop into any of these. I'm going to post them right now. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, she's got it all. So here they are for you. So Aunia, again, thank you so much just for taking the time out with us today. I appreciate it.
Aw, thank you very much. I appreciate it too. I'm really excited to be here.
Absolutely. So tell us about Rise Visible. What does your company do or do differently than others?
Sure. So Rise Visible is a web design, SEO, digital marketing agency that was birthed out of necessity rather than desire. So the job that I do and the agency that I own was something that wasn't a dream of mine. I had dreamed of being a therapist, and that was my lifelong goal. One of the reasons why I do Create for Healing, but perhaps we'll bring that up later. But that was my like dream, was coming from challenging environments really made me want to help other people. But then my life shifted about 20 something years ago, and I had to decide what I was going to do to take care of myself. I couldn't go to school anymore. I couldn't maintain a normal job, and I was seeking out answers for circumstances within my body that I couldn't understand, and everybody kept telling me I was a crazy person. And so it was really kind of this amazing blessing that years before, I had a friend who gifted me an old PC because he was a web designer, and their company changed all their software and hardware. So he gave me that, and I was given Photoshop, and I was given Dreamweaver and all of these things. And I did it for fun. I started building websites for friends. I started building album covers for myself and other people. And I learned graphic design. I learned website building, obviously very rudimentary and different than it is today.
Right.
Very different. I mean, GeoCities was kind of where it all started. But in that, when things had shifted with me, when I had lost my job and couldn't work anymore, and I lost my job due to 9/11. So that was a very challenging circumstance. I had moved states, which, as you know, right now I'm in the middle of doing that as well. But I had moved states, and in that I was trying to find work, and I was on my first day at a new job in a new city in a whole new place, and I'm generally an anxious person, so this was like real anxiety provoking for me. And in like very short time of being there, I want to say within like an hour, all of a sudden I heard screaming from the break room.
Wow.
And I went back, and it was 9/11. And I basically couldn't hack it. I walked out. I asked them if I could leave after a few minutes of being surrounded by people I don't know. Yeah. And I just couldn't deal with it. I was like, can I leave? And they were like, sure, but I never returned. I couldn't deal with it. So I went and I volunteered at the Red Cross for a while until I started running out of money. And then I had to think about what I was going to do, because I worked in the dental industry as a way to put myself through school, because it was a very financially viable job that you didn't have to have certification in Michigan for at the time. And you could be taught on the job, and you could make good money, and you can go to school. And people weren't hiring for that. Like, hiring had kind of stopped. And so what I did is I leaned into what I already knew, into a skill that was for fun. Never thought I'd be here 25 years later, but leaned in, 25 years as in going from like 1998 when I started it. But, at that point, I just didn't really think that that's anything I wanted to do. I didn't even know that I could do something creative or interesting. Like, that wasn't even a thought in my, life growing up with my family. No one ever encouraged my creativity or anything like that. So I tried to get a job at a couple local agencies. I knew a friend of a friend, and they interviewed me, and in a very short period of time, they're like, yeah, no, like, go home. It was bad. I mean, I wasn't great. I had really just my own self-taught person.
Sure.
So then I just started looking for little pieces, little jobs, little things, little here and there. And from there until now, that was a survival career. I didn't actually thrive. I just made my bills. I made it, got through. And only in the last 2 years did I get my major diagnosis, and did I become a thriving agency. So that's kind of how it all started. And I'm still shocked that I'm here, but I feel like the direction was perfect. Like, I couldn't be happier with what I'm doing. But I still have a love for psychology and helping people, so I find other projects. And even in what I do, there is a lot of therapy and marketing. Believe me, I'm talking to some of my clients. I'm like, okay, I'm definitely your therapist today.
Right. Right. Yeah, so you kind of ghosted that company before ghosting was a thing, sounds like.
That's right.
I mean, listen, 9/11 is one of those things that if you were of an age where you remember where you are and it impacted you in some way. And for you to be in a new job in a new state on your first day, like that's incredible. Not very many people could make it through that. So I don't think that your reaction was wrong in any way.
At this point, I'm like, well, but I mean, it's a very scary circumstance for anybody, even if it's exciting. I didn't even know how to get there. I didn't even know the roads to even get there. So mapping it out on MapQuest and like printing it out and like trying to find it. I was like, this is too much. I'm done.
Yeah. I had one job where my first day was January 10th in like 2000 and I don't know, 9 maybe. And I was living in Euless and I was going all the way to far northeast Dallas. And for those who don't live in this area, that's like an hour drive in the best conditions. And on January 10th, there was an ice storm. And I couldn't get anyone to answer the phone. And I sent an email. I was like, am I still supposed to come in? It was my first day. So I was like, well, I can't miss my first day. So I drove in an ice storm as slow. I think it took me 3 hours to get there, but I was still the first person to get to the office. And then slowly people started showing up and they were just like, oh my God, you actually came in? It was
a responsibility.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I had a kid to take care of at the time. Like, again, it's one of those things that it was necessary for me to do it. And it was a great job. It was a good stepping stone for me, I think. So, yeah, sometimes it's crazy how things just happen the way that they have to happen sometimes for the good and the bad, right?
Absolutely.
So you're also an artist and a photographer. How did you find your passion for art and photography and how did you kind of incorporate that into your journey?
Sure. So I've always been really artistic, not necessarily good, but just always enjoyed the process of creating things, right? Like making things. I would write songs as a kid, or I would create my own books as a kid, or I would, I don't know, paint on my mother's bedspread at the age of 2 and, make her
I've got one of those.
Because she's a single mom and she's like, that was a very expensive bedspread. Like that was a whole month's worth of, money. But when I started to have a lot of health issues in that transitional time with losing work, I started leaning into finding ways to kind of process those emotions. So I had always been, the poetry writer, the doodler, like that kind of person my whole life. I was the kid in school who had to stim to listen. I couldn't just listen to the teacher. I had to be drawing and doing things. So it was a form of self-therapy, even if it wasn't good. It doesn't matter. And I want to say that like art doesn't matter as long as you're enjoying it. It doesn't matter if it's good. A career just happened upon me. Yeah. So because I wasn't able to have a lot of drive in the work I did and other things, I turned it into this art thing, and I was producing and creating and manipulating and enjoying the process, not photography at that point, but really a photo manipulation and using Photoshop, because the really unique thing about art for me is digital space right now is so relevant, right? NFTs and this and that. Well, this is 2004, 2005. Yeah. Art galleries are looking for tangible things. They're not actually okay with digital at all. Like it's a big no. And so I had to work really hard to be in that space. And it was because, again, necessity. A lot of my life has been around necessity and challenge. It hasn't been choice. Although, when you do things, it is choice, but maybe it's not what I would have chose. But I'm allergic to everything. Yeah. So I'm allergic to all mediums. I'm allergic to basically anything and everything in the world. You can consider me a bubble girl. And so I wasn't able to touch something. I couldn't really paint without having, and it's not like, oh, I get a little bit of hives or, whatever. It's like I can have life-threatening reactions and die. So for me, I was like, okay. But being in the digital space, creating album covers and things like that, then I started to use it as a way to create art. And then I ran into some random guy, kind of like the computer thing. Like that friend of mine years ago gave me that computer. I wouldn't be here today if he didn't give me the computer. Right. Same circumstance with this random photographer I met. I was out at a park, and I rarely went out of my house, and I was just trying to get out. It was a little park, it was a little art event, a lot of young kids, and I was there like, doing a little watercolor, like trying to touch something in public, and he came over and he goes, "Can I take a photo of you?" And I at first was kind of like, no, old man, like,
what are you doing, weirdo?
Yeah. In his 60s, and I grew up, just being transparent, I grew up in a, with a, trigger warning. I grew up in a circumstance where I was sexually abused by an older male in my life. So any male figures of that kind of circumstance just made me immediately feel this sense of fear. But we ended up talking, and he ended up being a really good friend of mine. And he was a local newspaper photographer. He just thought I was interesting because I was all like in goth clothes and, black hair. And he's like, "You're unique looking. Can I take a picture of you?" And I'm like, "Stop it. I'm not different." Like, leave me alone. Although clearly, I know that I am. And yeah, so he took some photos of me. He helped me start creating reference photos for different work that I was doing. He became a really good friend of mine. And he's the first person that suggested that I get into art galleries. And he helped me submit my first slides before digital was a thing. And I got a lot of rejection because I was digital. There was a lot of, it was a lot of pushing against the system to get people to recognize that what I was doing was actually art. And then photography was kind of one of those things where I fell into it again. I had been a photographer since I was a kid. I had one of those old Kodak, like Fisher-Price cameras with the 110 film. I loved it, but then I didn't really pick it up again until necessity. And it was when I got out of the hospital in 2012 and ended up on a feeding tube formula that I really wasn't interested in doing art. I felt like there was more of a visceral thing I was trying to express. So I started these photo series, and I would set up my camera, I would set up the whole set, and I would use a remote control, and 90% of the photos had no head. Now I know that sounds morbid, but it wasn't that they were decapitated. It was that I really took more about expression, more about hands, body movement, things like that, like going through these challenging, it wasn't about the facial expression, which is very funny because a lot of my art often has had women gazing, facial expressions, complete connection, and my photography wasn't that way. So that helped me through a lot of healing process, and then I just became driven. Like, I'm going to get into shows, and I'm going to get into magazines, and I'm going to push the system, because when somebody tells me I can't do it because you're a digital artist, it only fuels the fire in my defiant person.
Right.
Like,
watch me. Yeah.
I will do it standing on my head. So that's how I got, I got into that. I'd always really enjoyed it. And right now, which is really kind of a fun and beautiful thing, is when I got my diagnosis in 2018 and the other really big one in 2021, I got on medication that shifted my whole art career. I can paint now. I can touch things. I can use watercolor. I can use, colored pencil. And so now I'm the opposite, right? Like, everybody else, like, we're digital. And I'm like, I am traditional. I'm always going the opposite direction. Like, okay. And I had to learn it all over again. So I did with my followers on Facebook. I have about 400,000 people who follow me on Facebook, and I was just transparent about it. I'm like, it sucks. It's ugly. I'm doing horrible work. Here I am being vulnerable. Like, it's okay to suck, because I do, and you should suck with me too. We all suck together. So
that's one of the things that you hear from artists and authors and all of these folks who are being creative is like, don't let trying to be good stop you from creating, just create. Like, just do it. Just write a sentence, paint a swipe on the page, whatever it is, just start. Because then once you start, you're in it. And it's just one of those things that maybe it'll flow that day, maybe it won't. But yeah, I love that you're just you're the trendsetter. That's what it is. You're ahead of your time. We're not going to say like you're behind your time or anything like that. You're ahead of the time. It's going to go back to the other direction. It's that pendulum swing, right? You're just on the opposite of the pendulum.
Absolutely.
Do you have a movie that you think more people should see?
So one of my all-time favorite movies is What Dreams May Come.
Ah, yes.
And, I'm not a big TV watcher or movie watcher because I have a really difficult time not emotionally getting beyond invested and completely emotionally wrecked from things. So I don't typically, but that movie in its own right, with it dealing with mental illness, with it dealing with companionship, with it just generally cinematically being so beautifully representational of a human experience is why I love it so much. And it hits home. It just feels, there's a lot of understanding. Whether or not you have had depression, or you've known somebody with depression, or you've had just depressive moments, and we've all been there, right?
Well, and that one, this movie actually just came up at work a couple weeks ago because someone was talking about it, and we were talking about Robin Williams and all this stuff, and they were talking about, grief and loss and everything. And so it's funny that you bring that one up because it's already on my list of like, I need to watch that again.
It's good. And Robin Williams is one of my most favorite people.
Yeah.
He clearly, it's a sad thing that he's not here with us. He was really quite a genius.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that is it. I think that is one of the very tragic losses in the creative world was Robin Williams, for sure. And there are plenty of them. I'm not saying he's the only one that's tragic, but man, that was just a bummer. And you watch all his stuff. My 16-year-old has been watching Dead Poet Society a lot lately. And so, I go in and I always go in at the parts that are going to make me cry. Like I'm working. And then I'm like, okay, I need to refill my water. And I walk out there and it's like, oh, they just found, the dad just found his son. And it's like, oh no. Or I walk in there and they're standing on the desk. So no, Captain, my Captain. I'm like, oh shit, here are the tears. And my 16-year-old will like throw the box of tissues at me. Like, here, Mom. He knows. So it's really evident that your health played a very significant role in your life and career. I mean, it made a lot of the decisions for you, right? So can you share with us the process of getting to the diagnosis after all this uncertainty and misdiagnosis and being told you were just crazy? How did that impact your understanding of your life when it happened, and how did you get to it happening? That's a long, complicated question, but
I'll try to make it in Cliff Notes. Okay. So the health thing, I mean, it's been a pretty intense journey for sure. I mean, it's one of those things that I still think every day, and probably for the rest of my life, I'll be in a continual, perpetual process, right? It's not like it's ever over. It's always just new and inventive every day. Like I'm like, oh, welcome to my body. But for me, the process, and I think it's important for people who are listening to this, that if they are in the process and they are trying to get answers and that no one is listening to them, because I went for 20 years and I don't give up. I'm very tenacious. Not everybody's like that, right? Mm-hmm. Like I am tenacious. I will push. I will demand. I will find a way to make you listen to me if I have to. And even with having that tenacity and drive that I have, there were moments of complete just breakdown, of feeling completely misunderstood. And I feel that every single day of my life, like completely misunderstood, not being listened to. Friends and family start doubting you. How can they not? If every doctor under the sun, and you've seen hundreds of them, are like, crazy, how is your family not going to kind of question that? And even in my own sanity, I even went as far as going, you know what? If that really is the case, if you really do think I'm crazy and everybody thinks I am, then let's sign me up. And I signed myself into a psych ward. I was willing to go that far. And I signed myself into a psych ward. That didn't work. I signed myself into 2 other treatment centers for high-level PTSD and an eating disorder because I couldn't process any sorts of foods. Obviously, none of that worked. Every time they gave me, medication for mental health, I would have such a severe adverse reaction. I had the opposite reaction to it, which is, again, part of the process of my illnesses. It's just all that makes sense now. And I still feel like I fight it with people. I still feel like, okay, so I can eat 10 foods in the same order every single day. And that's been like that for 12 years of my life. That's it. There's no deviation. There's no adding, like add a little salt, no, it's like, this is it. And I still have people in my life that have known me for years and just randomly go like, do you eat chicken? I'm like, no, did you want my list?
Right.
Because it's so difficult, not because they're insensitive, not because they're cruel or they're not listening. It's because my disease and the complexities, which that is one of 100 other things, is so outside the human perception of, I get that it's just beyond understanding. It takes somebody like my partner to live with me every day to be able to understand, like, I can't be in a shower for more than a period of time because I can have a life-threatening reaction. I have to make sure that if I get in a car, it has between these times during the day, because vibration in cars can liberate my mast cells and cause a life-threatening allergic reaction. And to me, it to everybody else, it sounds like I'm a crazy person.
Right.
But during those times before I got my mast cell diagnosis, and so I have, this probably help people to know what I have. So I have mast cell activation syndrome. Short answer is I'm allergic to everything. I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, which often is comorbid. So Ehlers-Danlos is typically the umbrella. And then mast cell is usually something that happens as a result of. And so does post-orthostatic tachycardia and dysautonomia and all that nonsense. Really, the EDS is the big thing. And that I only found out in 2021 July. So I'm coming up on my 2-year anniversary of that. And in all of that, getting those diagnoses and being in those moments were so huge to me that I had been explaining to people, like, I can't do this. And they're like, but why? And I'm like, well, I can't be in a car for too long. I know it makes me sick.
Right.
But people are like, okay, and you look crazy. Like, this sounds, and it feels neurotic. I am like not a high maintenance person.
Yeah.
But this makes me a very high maintenance person, right? And then when finally I got the diagnosis with Ehlers-Danlos, like, my whole world started to make sense. And then about a year later after that, I started seeing the comorbid associations with autism and ADHD. And often people with connective tissue disorders have autism and ADHD. And those who have been diagnosed with autism or ADHD, typically autism, they find that they also are either hypermobile or, they have EDS. So there's just like this thing that's going on. And so it was like this awakening of realizing that I know my body, but I've been doing things for 43 years that were protecting me and that I didn't understand. Good example, I used to wear army boots. I love boots. I love them. I wore them to my prom. I love boots. I wear boots all the time. To find out with Ehlers-Danlos, people don't understand, connective tissue is everything. It's your ligaments, it's your muscles, it's everything. And so when it's faulty, think of a rubber band that's been stretched too far, you can't fix it. And the more that it stretches, the more problems. So you have issues with your digestion and your heart valves. And, being bendy is really nice. People are flexible. It's not about being flexible, because they're flexible people who aren't sick, right? But this is about you bend too far and you're not going to bend back. Like your head can fall off your neck kind of thing. Like, I don't know if you remember that children's story about something with the green ribbon. But anyway.
Oh, you know what I'm around the neck? The green ribbon around the neck? Yes. Yeah. Vaguely.
So, that your head is very unstable and it pinches things. So with all of that being a thing, I was like, wait a second. I wore boots my whole life because my ankles aren't stable. Oh my goodness. And then when I lay on my back, I'll go to twist my arm and it'll pop out of socket. Well, I go running into the room 2 days after my diagnosis. I go, do you have your arm pop out of socket? And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, when you lay there and you turn it over and it kind of gets caught. He goes, no. Oh. That's your body. So I spent almost a whole year of aha moments. And I also had been, so to wrap this up, I had been trying to escape it. Without a diagnosis, there's a need to escape, or I'm going to get better, right? Sure. I'm going to find the answer and I'm going to get better. And as a person who has a career, I vanity searched myself years ago. And the first thing that comes up when you vanity search is illness. That sucks, right? I'm like, oh, that's the first thing people associate me with. That's great. But during this process of getting the Ehlers-Danlos diagnosis, mast cell dysautonomia, all of that, I finally came to understand that I have to accept this and that I want to embrace it. It's not going anywhere. And the more that I try to run from it, it's like anything, like your own anxiety. If you try to push it all down, it only makes it explode, right? So in that, I just said, you know what? All right, it is it. There's nothing I can do. And I have to accept everything that this is. And you know what? I'm going to be very vocal about it because you know what? There's other people that won't. Right. There's other people that can't, right? Like it's not all about it being, like, oh, they just don't want to. But I've learned being a part of the disabled community that there's just some people who can't. And I used to be that can't. Right? Like I couldn't talk about it. I didn't have anything to say. I didn't have the strength. I wasn't as strong as I am right now to do it. And we need those advocates because those of us that are disabled, we have our good days and we have our bad days. And maybe this is my good few years to open my big mouth. I don't know. But that's where I'm at. But I don't shame anybody who can't because I spent the majority of my life not being able to speak up, you know?
Yeah. And it's not, it's, if you're living with a disability, that is enough work. And if you don't have the energy to go out and be an advocate or to add being a voice for others on top of that, that is understandable and it's okay. And so kudos to you for having the energy and for using it for this, because that is something that is not an easy thing to do. And I'm sure, if one day you wake up and you're like, I don't have the energy for it anymore, I am sure there will be someone else who now finds that they do have the energy. So it's a community effort, I think.
It is. Yeah. It is. Absolutely. Yeah.
So living with all of that sounds very, very challenging. I'm glad that you got the main diagnoses out of the way. I'm so sorry that you had to go through all of the medical trauma of having to try to advocate for yourself and get all of that. So since you got that diagnosis, what have been some of the strategies and ways that you manage kind of your daily life and everything that you live with?
Yeah, so that's a good question. For me, I think having the answer has been so transformative. And I don't think people understand how important that is. Because if people are living without having an answer, that's enough work in its own, right? It's completely draining. It's completely exhausting to not be able to say to a doctor or say to somebody, this is what I have and this is, why it looks like this. This is, where I am. And for me, in the last year, I try to manage it with a different kind of outlook. And that is, and I know some people might find this to be negative, right? They might be like, I try to look at it as a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
I try to find, it's kind of like that funny thing where they say, okay, well, if my partner and I are driving and he turns the right way off a direction I don't know, I have a meltdown because I have no idea where we're going. But all of a sudden I'm in a crisis and I'm like amazing, right? And I think that with any human being, whether it's a disabled person or somebody who's dealing with mental health or whatever, is we have these moments in which we're epic, that we're good at. And we have these moments that are our kryptonite and that really do cripple us as human beings. And if we can make sure that we try to remember what the challenging things do give us. Okay, if you are a highly sensitive person, instead of being like, oh, I'm so sensitive, it's like, well, I'm an empathetic human being that wants the world to be a better place. Or, I have EDS and everything in my body is a problem. But I get up every day and the fact that I can walk is something that I go, you know what? I woke up and I can walk today. Today I can do this. And that is my superpower. And tomorrow, maybe it's not. But I also have learned to live in the void of feeling bad and accepting that that's fine. Like I've had such a high level perfectionist attitude that I grew up with around family of having to perform and be perfect and toxic positivity and everything, don't show anything. And I have learned to live from an extremely vulnerable place where I just don't care, truly. If I have to talk about bathroom issues with you, I'm going to. If I'm working with a client and they're being vulnerable about something, just because I'm the authority in an agency doesn't mean I'm not going to create vulnerability. And my partner sometimes will challenge that because he's not similar to me in that. He'll be like, I don't know if you should have been that vulnerable. And I'm like, you know what? We need people to be vulnerable and be able to be in that pain space. And we need to be able to go down in that, right? Go down and go, this is a shit day. This is a shit day. And you know what? I don't have to feel better. There are certain circumstances, I understand you're a mom and things like that, where we do have to show up sometimes, right? Like when we're not our best. But there are moments where we do have those spaces where we can go, you know what? It's a shit day. It's a shit life. You be mad about your life. And I think we put so much pressure on people, whether or not it's disabled people or able-bodied people, to just not have a bad day. And everything should be okay. And everything's going to work out. Well, what if it doesn't? And you know what? That's okay too. What if it doesn't? Not everything's going to work out. Life sucks. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Quit looking for the answer to everything being right and being normal and being flowing, to realize that it truly is like this. And when you have those good, you really just accept that, because you know what? You are going to have bad again. You just are. You're going to have a really tough time in the future. So enjoy your moment now, So I think that's truly kind of where I live, is just in reality, just being real, being vulnerable and real, and letting other people be real. Because a lot of people don't get to be seen.
Right.
They don't get to be real.
That's one thing that my therapist will get on to me about, because I am a single mom. I am influential at work. And so it's one of those things that, like, I'll have really shitty days. And whenever I'm talking to my therapist about it, she's like, okay, that was a bad day. What did you do about it? And I'm like, well, I just turned around and solved this over here. I did this over here and kind of moved through. And she's like, hold on. What did you do? Like, what did you do about it being a bad day? I was like, well, I just kind of moved on. She's like, stop. You have to talk about it being a bad day. Because I just want to say, I moved on. I did this over here. I did this over here. I coped with it this way or whatever. And she's like, yeah, but how did it make you feel? And I don't like to dwell on the feelings very much, and she gets on to me about that a lot. But yeah, sometimes you just have to say, look, this is crappy, and I just don't think it's going to get better. And talking to somebody about it who's willing to say, yeah, sometimes you just have a bad day. That's something that is really valuable that I think a lot of people overlook. Just saying, I'm sorry you're having a shitty day. That sucks. Instead of saying, I'm sorry you've had a shitty day. Did you go outside and get some sunshine?
Right? Exactly. I'm an overworker. I get what you're saying. Because my go-to has been similar to that. Like something's bad or not going great. And I'm like, well, I'm going to work and I'm going to do this. I'm going to change my this. I'm going to do that. And sometimes you don't even have to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Like sometimes it's really like, okay, sit down, sit with yourself for a minute. Like quit running. And just be. Like, it's okay to just be. We don't have to run all the time away from the thing. And sometimes when we sit with it, we learn to befriend it. There was this poem. I've never been an addict, but I've had a lot of addicts in my life. And there was this beautiful poem about this monster and this kid. And the synopsis is this kid was just always fighting the monster. I'm probably getting it totally wrong, but it was like 20 years ago. And all of a sudden, when the kid decided to, or the person decided to embrace the monster, they realized that the monster was them. And it's kind of the thing. We are the monster to ourselves often. The critic, the pushing, the this, the that. We're not often the nurturer. Like, you know what? It's okay that you're having a bad day. We're not the parent to ourselves often. Mm-hmm. We're often the critic. And that's very damaging.
Yeah. Yeah. I hate when my therapist tells me to sit with it, but honestly, when I do, it does help, like begrudgingly, as much as I hate doing it. It does help. It's just not what I prefer. I do prefer to run away from it. And sometimes I do just run away from it, even when my therapist is telling me not to, but we're all human. We're all human. We all got to deal with our own shit, however we got to deal with it, honestly.
Absolutely.
So what made you change your approach from like, you know, kind of hiding stuff, being a woman in a male-dominated industry and facing skepticism from doctors and advocating for yourself, but also just speaking about your story? And what has been the response since you started speaking about your story?
I think it's exhausting to, kind of like you said earlier, it's exhausting to be sick. It's exhausting to have health issues. And that's a full-time job before you even work. Mm-hmm. It's getting up every day. It's a full-time job to get through my day without dying.
Right.
You know, it's a landmine for me. But when I also realized that having all of these things not being able to go away, like they're just going to be here and there's no choice. For me, there was no other better way for me to live my life. Because again, that transparency, that, you know, I feel like I'm living a lie by hiding it. I feel like I live a lie by telling my friends excuses, right? Because I had nothing to tell people. So I'm like, you know, like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do this or whatever. Or maybe falling out on a job I couldn't do or whatever the case may be. And that is also a job because you feel like a liar. You know, you feel, and there's, again, let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with hiding it. If you don't feel the need to share it with somebody, you're not a liar. Right. You know, you are a person keeping yourself safe. And that's completely 100% okay. But for me, as a vulnerable, transparent human being, which that's just who I am intrinsically, for me, holding that, even the male-dominated industry work thing, like I didn't put my name on my website. I didn't put pictures of myself on my website because I didn't want to be judged being a woman. Mm-hmm. Because I have definitely experienced quite a lot of challenging aspects on phone calls and things like that. Not so much with clients, but it's more with, you know, other tech businesses or other circumstances in technology where they're like, you know, like, you don't know anything. And I'm like, I do. And in all of that, I was like, I just want to be authentic. How can I expect people to feel safe if I don't create this authenticity that I already just generally feel. Like, and I think it also comes from being neurodivergent, truly. Like, I don't know how to lie to you. Like, I mean, I'm sure I could do a white lie if I needed, but if you like, do you like my pants? Don't ask me if you don't want to know. Like, and I just feel like it's too hard for me to hold a facade. And it's easier for me to not, although it's also very risky. So I don't want to say like, oh, well, it's harder for me to hold a facade, but then going into the world going, I'm disabled and no people are judging me and clients are going to potentially drop me and people are going to judge me and call me weak. I know all of that is there. But my life has been so short for being healthy. It's been so short for being present. And I don't know if I'm going to die tomorrow. Nobody does. But for me, I do live in a very strange circumstance where every single, like this house I'm closing on, I have such an extreme urgency to get there. And everybody else, my lender, my realtor, everybody's like, it's normal time. And I'm like, I know, but you don't understand. I've lost so much of my life. And there's so much urgency and so much concern of not making it further, that in the moments of transparency, in the moment of being myself, I'm like, what if I'm only here for 2 years? What if I can only be this? I don't want to live a lie. For me, again, I want to be very clear because I'm very supportive of people keeping their stuff to themselves.
Sure.
My partner is extremely private individual. No problem with that. I am not. I'm a big mouth. I have a lot to say. I just do. I have a lot to say. I have a lot of love. I have a lot of compassion. I have a lot of support. And I'm going to use it for the good that I can and the time that I can. And that's just kind of where I live. I live in a very strange space that no one around me gets.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at my gray hair and I literally get teary-eyed because I didn't think I'd ever see it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I never thought I'd actually see this. And people are like, are you going to cover it? I'm like, hell no. I don't think so. This is my release threat. I deserve this.
Yeah. I'm starting to get grays, and it's one of those things where I just don't care like other people seem to care if they have gray hair. But it probably has to do with the rest of my hair is so thin, like you can see like straight into my scalp and stuff. But the gray hairs, when they come in, they're thick.
They're thicker.
Like, yes, they are thicker. So I'm like excited that I'm about to have thick hair again.
That's great. Gave my hair some volume. I'm like, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Come on, I'll take it. Maybe it'll stop falling out so much. Maybe not. I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's amazing because I also hid a lot when I was a little bit younger. And being completely open and honest about stuff is in the timeline of my life. It's new. And so I was raised, you don't talk about stuff with other people. You don't do a lot of this. And I really believe that COVID opened up a lot of things in terms of mental health and what we can talk about. But even before COVID, like I had started talking about postpartum depression when I had my youngest. And after I had him and after I had that diagnosis, and my OB was great, and she just like prescribed these pills, and then all of a sudden it was better. And I was just talking to my mom one day, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, yeah. And so kind of from that point is when I started saying, I'm going to be a little more open about this. I'm going to be a little more honest about this. And it's amazing how many people just come out of the woodwork to say, I'm so glad that you talk about this because now I feel like I can talk about it. Like, it's incredible, just the impact that sharing anything of your own can have on people. So, yeah, I mean, but there are plenty of people who don't want to do that. And that is okay too. If you want to live your life completely privately, that is your prerogative. Absolutely. So how did you go in your opinion from just surviving with disabilities? What's your definition of thriving with disabilities? And are there any specific practices or mindsets that have kind of supported that?
So I think surviving was based on not having a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But I also truly do feel that there were moments of thriving during the darkest times. And I would attribute that to the book Mindset. And it's that fine line between toxic positivity, but really just where your mind is, right? Like, how are you perceiving what's going on? You know, how can you perceive it in a better way, or a more, not necessarily better, but a different way? How can you pick yourself up quicker? How can you, your mindset is everything. When you have something that your brain is what you have, especially if you're disabled in the body. I mean, your brain is what you have. And even if you're disabled in the brain, your brain is a powerful machine that still can be rewired to do different things. It's a remarkable, remarkable thing. And for me, it's been that mindset of, okay, this roadblocks happen, and you know what, I'm going to be okay. Because I really haven't had a support system. I really haven't had a family system. I mean, I've had friends and really wonderful people along the way, but I've never had this like core, like my family has just been there for my whole life. Or, I haven't had like core friendships from high school or anything like that, because I was odd and weird and strange. But, I like that now. But for me, that mindset has really helped me, I feel, thrive the best that I could without a diagnosis. And then having that diagnosis is one of the most powerful things that someone can have that's been suffering, because it's like, I mean, it's crazy making. It's absolutely crazy making, and it's like being gaslit by the medical community. I'm regularly in therapy over medical trauma. And even with my diagnosis, even that, I was in the hospital last year and I still was treated poorly. Even though I let them know this is what I have, I'm allergic to anesthesia, so when you want to cut me open, like, it's not going to work. And yet they didn't believe me, didn't understand, and we ended up having to hold me down for a surgery thing. It was like a wake surgery. It wasn't like something crazy. It was actually an infection they had to get rid of. And no matter what, I tried to explain. And so kind of coming back to that mindset, coming back to the thriving, is being able to find those moments like, I got through that. And you know what? I advocated for myself and I did the best. And I'm going to be okay. Because you truly, if you have somebody in your life that's an advocate for you and supportive of you, you are lucky. So many people every single day have nobody, not a single individual that cheerleads for them, holds their hand where they're sick, nothing. And that's a dark place to be. And you have to be your advocate. And I think that's where I've been able to thrive, is I have a very large background in psychology. Even though I didn't do that, I've even my therapist is like, if I could just give you a PhD, I'd just give it to you. Like, you've done so much work in that field already. But you have to be your own advocate. Thriving is really what thriving is for you. Thriving for somebody could be, I got up out of bed today. And you know what? That's thriving. For me, thriving is a place that I never thought I would be, and completely beyond me. My business has scaled beyond a space that I ever thought. I had a goal and I hit it. Blown away. I never thought I'd be buying the house that I'm buying right now. There's so many things about my life that are so amazing in the moment. But again, I want to be empathetic and understand and let people know not everybody who has health issues is going to be able to scale a business. Right. Not everybody who has health issues is going to be able to buy a house. Like, these are things that are a freaking miracle. Like, it's not like, oh, I deserve this, and oh, I'm, it's like, no, it's a miracle, and I'm shocked. And that feels like thriving to me. But even if I woke up every single day and I just believed in myself, no matter what anybody said, And I know that that really is the best place to thrive, period.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel like you can define thriving in whatever way that looks like for you. If you feel good about it, then that's thriving, you know? That's something that you can't, like you said, it's not something that everyone's going to be able to replicate. It's not a, here's step 1 through 5 that I did to thrive with these disabilities. Like, that's not a thing. If someone's trying to do that, it's probably snake oil. Don't buy it.
Absolutely.
But, you know, you can get connected in with communities, and you can get connected in with people who have struggled in similar ways to you. Of course, no two stories are the same. But you can learn from other people's experiences. I think that's really important.
You don't have to be marvelous either. That's the thing. You're marvelous even though you're not marvelous. You know, people will look up to people and go, oh, that disabled person, you know, they're missing limbs, but they ran that race, you know, like I should be like that. It's like, yeah, and maybe they wanted that, but does other people who have limb loss want that? No, maybe they don't. You don't have to be marvelous. You just be you. Your marvelous life is just you and you're in your life alone. I think the internet has really skewed, people's visions of what a good life is. Must have this boat, must have this yacht, must be a famous TikToker. You must be something.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? Being something is waking up every day and being with your family, waking up every day being with your dog or your cat. Like, that's marvelous. A lot of these famous people down the road, doesn't matter when they're dead. You know what I mean? Or when people get really, really sick and they're on their deathbed, doesn't matter if they're a TikTok star. You know, like, all that doesn't matter. And I think a lot of people who are disabled already feel it as a deficit just doing normal things, right? And so then all these other things that look amazing, it's like, well, I wish I could do that. It's like, well, you know, it's really great when I get into a car. So I went out, we're at this Airbnb right now, and I went out for the first time kind of on my own. And like I told you, I have issues with cars. Vibrations in cars can cause me life-threatening reactions. Like, it's very traumatic for me to get into a vehicle. Like, I don't love it at all. And I came home, and I went to a few different places, came home, and I was like, look at what I did. And to me, that was amazing. But to other people in my life who don't get it, they're just like, wow, like, driving is a thing, right? They just get in their car, just go. They don't think about it. It's no big deal. But to me, that was epic. I went 5 places by myself. You know, I was like, this is amazing. You know, but that was my win.
Yeah. Different things that some people take for granted are going to be milestones for other people. And that's fine.
That's right.
I'm glad you brought up the internet. So are there any examples that you've had where the internet has played a role in your life or the lives of people that you know with disabilities that have been positive? I mean, we just talked about some of the negative, but how has the internet been a positive thing in your life?
I wouldn't have the career I have today with any part of it without the internet. The internet, for me, you know, and it's also changed due to COVID too, in an even more important manner. But, you know, when I started this process, I was housebound before COVID. I was wearing masks 10 plus years before COVID.
Trendsetter. There it is again.
That's right. I'm a trendsetter. That's right. I was in lockdown before lockdown school. You know? But I had no way to, and I'm a people person, I like people, and I had no way to do anything but communicate through message boards, building websites, you know, doing that kind of emails, outreach, all of that networking over the internet, which allowed me to have a career. And if this was 20 years prior to, I'd just probably be sitting in my room reading a book, because there wouldn't have been the opportunities that the internet has forged for me to be able to do what I'm doing.
Right.
And then when COVID happened, I think it really impacted the disabled community in a powerful, positive way, because all of a sudden things that were never virtual became virtual. And people who perhaps couldn't go to a concert because they weren't mobile could go to a concert. People that couldn't have a certain type of job because there was never remote openings, all of a sudden there's these remote openings for better jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I even had a networking group who met in person. It was just like the sweetest darn thing. Bring a computer, bring a laptop, put me at the end of the table, and Zoom me into a meeting in a restaurant. And I was a part of this networking group for a while that did that, because people, once COVID happened, I think the disabled community has always been open to like remote or how to do things different, how to live in an able-bodied world. And then all of a sudden people who were more able-bodied started to see all the things they could do to help people that weren't, and also were struggling with some of the similar circumstances, right? So I think COVID, as much as it's horrendous, let me be clear, because when I say, oh, great things happen, it's like, well, lots of people died. And yes, it did. But in any horrible thing, we often try to find the shining light within it. It doesn't glorify or make what happened, any less than. But I think it's a coping mechanism to find the good, or find the joke in it, or try to find fun, or not fun, but like humor, and like like I can't walk today and I ran into a wall, like I'm not gonna get mad at myself. It's just like, well, like, I'm having a bad day. It's kind of funny. But COVID has really changed that, and I think the internet has been a life-giving window for people with disabilities and challenges, in a way to connect in ways that are alternative and extremely helpful. I believe it's saved lives.
Yeah.
I also believe it's caused damage too, but in the positive aspects of it, I think, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have the career I have. I would not have the connections I have. I would not have anything without the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't have to be one or the other. COVID was terrible. There were some great things that came out of it. Like, just like all bad things, there are bad things that happen. 9/11 was terrible. There are some good things that happened after. Like, adversity, what is it? It's like, adversity is the mother of all invention or something. I don't know whatever that quote is. Like, there's a quote. Someone knows what I'm talking about. But whenever there's something bad, there is typically someone somewhere will say, look, here's a way for us all to stay connected during this terrible thing that's happening. Look, here's a way to make sure that people are getting services in their home that they're not able to get, that they normally would be able to get because of this bad thing that's happening. So we are not at all claiming that COVID was good. It wasn't. It sucked. It was complete bullshit. Just situation all around. However, there were some good things that came out of it. Everyone went through this collective trauma as a society. And now we talk about depression more. Now we talk about anxiety more openly. Those, even if it was just that, even if there weren't more remote opportunities or anything like that, even just being able to say on a normal day now, hey, I'm not feeling great. Oh, what's wrong? My depression is really bad today. That's something that's amazing to be able to do in a work environment or with your kids, So it's, I'm going to step off that. I'm going to step off that soapbox now.
That's big. I get where you're going off. Yeah. It's a very big thing, and not anything has to be mutually exclusive one way. I can find something disheartening, but also find it's positive.
Yeah.
It's hard for people in the world, especially politically, to realize that there's this gray area of both things can be true,
Yeah, absolutely. Are there specific projects or initiatives? I think early on we mentioned Create for Healing, so maybe we can talk about that here. But are there specific projects or initiatives that you're involved in that help others with disabilities find ways to cope or thrive in challenging times?
Yeah, so Create for Healing Create for Healing is an educational platform, virtual. There's courses, there's art, there's writing, and then they are paired with Challenging topics. So it could be anywhere from loss to grief. It could be overcoming narcissistic abuse. And it's using creativity as a way, as a healing tool. It's not therapy. And we encourage on the website to make sure you have a therapist. And if you want to do these projects, that perhaps, maybe your therapist will want to do them with you, or whatever the case may be. They're often pretty benign unless they're real challenging topics. So in that also kind of came after my diagnosis. So as a passion project, I had in my mind for numerous years, but I never felt strong enough or well enough to lead something where I had to be that person, right? Like I just felt weak and not ready for that challenge. And I would never want to do something with ego in it or a desire and lead somebody or numerous people in a not correct path because somehow I have the desire to help people. And that happens a lot with coaching and spiritual things and all that, where people will come into industries because they want to help and they don't heal or work on themselves enough before they start helping people, and they actually cause damage. And it took a very long time for me to get here. And with my therapist, and also I have 2 other people in my life who are also therapists that are not my therapists, I went over, they know me, and I kind of got this approval, not that I needed any sort of approval, but I like third party, like I don't
input, feedback,
more feedback. I might think I'm doing great, but I'm not stupid. I'm going to listen to people around me because what I know is maybe not true. And I got a lot of really big support, especially from my therapist. Like, you know what? I know you wanted to be a therapist. I know you feel like you should have been that. You can find a way to help the world in a completely different way as long as you're doing it safe and legally and all of that. And so I decided to go ahead and launch Create for Healing. And it was this amazing project that so many people flocked to, so many people enjoyed the courses, so many people just found this sense of safety, and I felt like I was doing something, because I just can't live in a world, although doing web design, SEO, coding, digital marketing, there's psychological aspects, and like I said, I often talk to clients who are needing support or that kind of stuff. But it still just wasn't that, completely focused thing on the thing that I've always been passionate about, is helping people find a way to deal with the challenges in their life in a healthy, constructive manner. Because we all have tendencies to overeat, smoke, drink, gamble, self-harm, whatever the case may be, to deal with these things. And the more that we're open as a society and can teach people how to take destructive behaviors and actually find behaviors that are really positive and actually helpful and give them that same kind of dopamine or that same kind of rush that they're needing, then it can be really beneficial. And as a young adult, I was very challenged. And I'm going to say this as a trigger warning. I used to self-harm, and I found that drawing helped me remove the need to harm myself. And I think that those types of creativity are really helpful. We also hear from people, because I am an artist and I do things in galleries and I run this, of like, oh, well, I could never do art like you. And I'm like, it's not about that. This whole project is about doing what you can and enjoy it. Creativity, there are people that are professionals and they do that. But creativity as a whole, as a part of us, like all the way back into like Egyptian times, right? Like creativity is a desire, a need, whether or not you're working on a car or you're moving furniture around because you want to interiorize the idea of being creators. It doesn't have to be beautiful. And once we learn to let go of the outcome and really are in the process of just enjoying ourselves, then we actually start to heal. We actually start to move into a beautiful space of, we can also take the creativity that we're using and we can turn it inward and create our lives, which is pretty remarkable, right? We learn to control our own lives, and we see ourselves as a work of art. And so I just love it. I wish I had more time for it.
Yeah.
It is not a money-making thing, so I want to be clear. If people were to go to createforhealing.com, most of the classes are free. A lot of them are pay what you can, and there's just a few that are, that have a good dollar amount because they're, I don't know, 22 lessons and like 18 hours of video, right?
Right.
It's a big project. But a lot of them are free or pay what you can, because truly for me, it's accessibility more than it is money, because my job pays for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really just about getting that into the hands of people. And it was also inspired by COVID. So many people needed something to do.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, were at a place of just tension, trauma, being stuck with their families, relationships were falling apart. People were wanting to kill each other because they were around each other all the time. There was just so much tension. And so it was also a necessity for that, I think. It was like, okay, and this is a really good time because I need it, and I think everybody else does.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, I just posted the links. If anyone's interested in checking that out, please go to the website, createforhealing.com, and check it out. See if there's something for you. That sounds really cool. I'm going to look at it too. So as someone who has experienced the intersection of disabilities and gender dynamics and the digital world, what is some advice you would give individuals who are facing similar challenges on how they can navigate their careers and personal lives with resilience and empowerment?
I think truly being true to yourself is probably one of the most important things that anybody can do, is really being able to tune in and really understand you as a person,
Mm-hmm.
not what your family has said to you, not what your teachers have said to you, not what your friends have said to you. It's really like finding who you are inside. What is your authentic, even if you're weird and different and unusual. There's a lot of people who like that. I love crazy, interesting, weird, and unusual people, right? Like I'm not, I'm not neurotypical. So I like the strange people, but just being, whether or not you're normal too, there's nothing wrong with being normal. Like, I always try to say things like that. It's like, it doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. Being non-judgmental at yourself and being authentic helps you be non-judgmental towards other people, which creates a safe space for pretty much everybody. Because like, who cares what everybody else is doing? No one cares. Just do your thing, be you, and do your very best. And you know what? Your best is what you decide the best is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what your children think it is. It's not what your mother thinks it is. It's not what your teachers thinks it is. I mean, under certain circumstances, of course, there's always variables. Like, I'm doing the best on my test. I didn't study. Well, okay, that's not your best.
Right.
But generally speaking, just do your very best. Come at life with, instead of fear, come at life with wonder.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, coming at life with, feeling everybody's judging you. The less you judge other people, the less that people will judge you, right? So it's just authenticity. I don't know how else to say it, but it doesn't matter who you are or what you're dealing with. You just got to be authentically you, because the minute you put your guard down, the minute you are authentically you, people will hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be immune to being harmed. That's life, unfortunately. But the sooner, everything will make so much sense. And I know I say this to people, and I know they're younger, and I'm also at an age where I don't give a hoot, right? Like, I'm 45, and it's true. Once you start getting into your 40s and your 50s, it really does change what you care about. It does change kind of like how you might want to like appear to your friends or appear in life. You kind of just are like, I don't really care. Like, this is what you get if you don't like it. And the more authentically you are, the right people will be around you. And it will also remove those people who are being there for what they think you are, what they wish you would be, and all the above. I would rather have 2 people around me my entire life than have a group of people that act like they like me based on, And it's rough. So, and I'll say that too, is it's not easy to be authentic. It's not easy to be vulnerable. It's not a just snap your fingers and that's how you live your life. But I'm telling you, it takes so much stress off of it when you can just do that in safe spaces, because not every place in the world is a safe space to be you. And if you find that you're in a place that you can't just be you, and you need to work your best at trying to figure out how you can get to a place, or, you know, if it's a physical location or whatever, where you can just be, because there's plenty of places around the world that will accept whatever it is, who you are as a human being. You have to be authentic. It sucks. It's hard. And even my partner will say to me sometimes, he's like, you know, you get hurt by doing that. And I'm like, you know what? But I also get right back up. And I'd rather be that person than put on a facade to protect myself.
Right.
I don't have the energy. So I hope people out there listening will really look inside themselves and realize that they're important, they're valued, they deserve to be seen, recognized, loved, cared for. And even if it's just by themselves alone, that's okay too.
Yeah. Yeah, look, it doesn't matter what you are, what you look like, anything, what you sound like, none of it. There's somebody out there who is going to connect with you if you are being your authentic self. I absolutely 100% believe that. There's someone out there who will connect with you if you are being your authentic self. And it's so much work to not be your authentic self. Like, cut yourself some slack and just be you.
Although it might be scary.
Yes, absolutely. Scary. I get it. But try it.
The scary means we're growing, right? Like fear, things that are scary often are just unknown. Doesn't mean that they're bad.
Absolutely. Is there anything you do now in terms of self-care or other exercises or activities to continue your success despite any challenges that may arise?
Yeah, so I have my partner working with me, and he is the most amazing individual. So he definitely helps in ways that, kind of like COVID, you know, when he lost his job to COVID, he ended up being home with me and couldn't find work. And then I said, well, why don't I teach you the business? It was the best thing I ever did, because it's like I have like the most amazing supportive person with me. However, if I didn't have that, let's say I didn't, because not everybody does. And back to my own self-care, it's giving myself grace on hard days and not being hard on myself, which is very difficult for me to do. It is keeping everything in order, because I like that. Chaos doesn't work for me. I'm very organized, like anally organized. So I try my very best to keep things, you know, like I know what I'm doing and I have things planned out so that I'm not like, oh my gosh, what's going on? I need to have that kind of consistency. Exercise is challenging for me because exercises can cause allergic reactions, you know, like everything can cause allergic reactions. But I take my dogs on short walks. I make sure that when I'm having a rough time, I do reach out to a friend or my therapist. I don't sit in struggle and pain by myself. Sometimes that's okay. Sometimes we need to be alone and just be in the pit of despair. But I make sure that I do reach out to people. And one thing I learned, and I think it's very important, is people don't often want to reach out to other people. And I remember this when I fell and I broke both my arms. Okay? That was lots of fun.
Yikes.
You want to talk about a humbling experience? And I like to help people. I don't want people helping me. And I remember the most important thing that I heard was a friend of mine said, you know, she's like, don't you like helping people? I was like, yes. Like if somebody does something for me, I got to do 10 times more for them. Like I am a helper. Let me do the thing. She said, you know, every time that you don't allow somebody to help you, every time you don't ask for help, you do not give somebody an opportunity to feel that good feeling that you get when you help someone else. And I went, holy crap. It was just like, so in my day-to-day, when I need something, I do reach out. I do lean in. I do ask for help, you know, and I try to get very good sleep. I try to eat, obviously, the 10 foods that I eat. I don't try to eat healthy because I eat the same thing. But, I try to eat on a timely manner. And I think a lot of people that have disabilities or mental health issues, one thing that they really do have challenges with are eating good, eating in a rhythm, going to bed at a good time, getting in these life kind of, maybe you need to take vitamins, maybe you need to do whatever, maybe seeing friends is important to you. And I always tell people who are curious about that is you need to make a list of all the things that support you that you may not be doing. I know that I'm better when I get 8 hours sleep and I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I know that I'm better at this, for me, it's I have to now in my age bracket. Like I don't really, it's like, well, I'll pay for it. And so there's no debating certain things for me. There's no debating. It just is, or I'm sicker than a dog. But when you're not in that space, it's finding what those spaces are. What are those things that are good for you? What are those things that help you? What are the things that make you feel good? Your dog, your kids, your partner, your home, a warm blanket, a hot glass of tea, a good book, and get yourself into a rhythm. Because every doctor in the world, I think their biggest issue is that they never look at the whole body. They're always trying to symptomatically deal with things rather than going like, how are you sleeping? How are you eating? Rather than, just like judging people on how they look.
Right.
And I think as a person, for me, managing things and encouraging other people, life sucks, it's difficult. But if you really could take the time, you can have a better life if you just put a few things in that kind of order to help balance you. It can change your life. I've not been good at it. I'll be very clear. It's not been an easy task for me until it became a mandatory circumstance. And now I'm very glad that I'm more balanced. Do I fight with it? Sure. Am I perfect? No. Do I go to bed at 2 a.m. and hate myself the next day? Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. I like what you said about doing it whenever you're not having a bad day, because I think that that's really critical. If you're already having a bad day, don't give yourself an extra task to sit down and list things out. Give yourself a pass to do that another day and pick a day that's good and be like, okay, here are the things that when I have a bad day, make me feel better, make me feel comforted, all of that stuff. Because first of all, when you're already having a bad day, if you're like me, your answer is going to be nothing helps. True, right. Nothing makes me feel better. But if you're in a good place on a good day, you're like, okay, when I'm having a really shitty day, a very soft blanket is very, very nice. Or, maybe you don't like to have anything touching your skin. Maybe it's walking around naked in your house with the blinds closed. Whatever it is. Taking a hot shower, taking a cold shower, whatever it is that works for you on a good day. Write that out on a good day.
That's right. Don't taskmaster yourself as you're under the blanket crying.
You don't need one more thing. That does not need to be I said I was going to do it today, so now I have to do it today. Just do it the next day. It's fine. No one is going to, come out and say, oh my God, you didn't do it today. You said you were going to. If they do, then they're shitty, and you should tell them so. Tell them I said so.
Yeah, we said that.
Yeah,
we're shitty.
Yes.
You can start again. That's another thing, is that I always tell myself, you can start again. You can do it again. You can start again the next day.
Yep.
Right? Like, you can start over tomorrow. Doesn't matter. You can start over 2 hours from now. Like, doesn't have to be,
And I also want to say, you were talking about doing your best, and that looks different for a lot of different instances, but it also looks different from day to day. Like, my best yesterday is not what I can do my best today. And my best tomorrow is not going to be the same best that I can do today. So I love to compare myself to other people and to my previous self and all, like, everything. I think a lot of people do that. We were talking about that with social media. You compare your life to this and all of that. Don't compare yourself to yourself from another day. Like, that self hadn't been through what you have been through today. Your best today is just your best. It's just what you can do. Tomorrow, maybe you'll do better. Tomorrow, maybe you'll do worse, but You can
That was my
define-
best.
Bless you.
I tried not to, and I was like, well,
It's all good. Look, everybody sneezes. It's fine. So Bite Mark sent in a question ahead of time. She would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
Oh, my favorite poem. I think it would be going back to that like poem story for addicts. I feel like that probably is a really powerful. I wish I could think of it as like called the dragon in me or something. But I feel like that has stuck with me for so long.
Okay,
I collect poetry books, so I love all sorts of poetry.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll have to find that one. So you think it's called like The Dragon in Me?
Yeah, I think it's called The Dragon in Me.
Okay.
And it's around addiction. It's centered around that.
I'll find that one and make sure that she gets it. Okay, it is time for our magic moment. I actually have a magic wand. I'm going to make it so it doesn't flash so quickly, but it is a magical rainbow wand. If you could wave this magical rainbow wand and eliminate one common opinion, misconception, or theory surrounding mental illness, disabilities, or mental health, what would it be?
I think that it would be that people don't have an understanding that there are people with challenges, even if they're not seen.
Absolutely.
I think we sit in rooms with people, right? And everybody might look able-bodied. Like if it isn't visually, there isn't a visual representation of a disability or a mental illness, I feel like there's this big, huge gray area of disconnection with the world. Disability often means you're in a wheelchair. Disability often means X, Y, Z, whatever the case may be. And there's this very large group of individuals in this lovely gray area. Oops. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
That was my medication alarm.
No, that's fine.
That gray area in which, there's shades of all of it, and there's so many more people than you would ever know that are dealing with disabilities or mental illness that are not at all going to say anything or that you would know. And so even with myself being somebody who is disabled, I used to help organizations here, or not here now, but here over where I was living, Oregon Supported Living, which help people with disabilities live better lives. And I didn't associate myself as a disabled person. I was like, I often saw disabled people as this group of people. And then all of a sudden, it was this year, and I'm like, oh, I'm part of that, because even my own experiences, I didn't identify because they're so detached, right? It's like you're either able-bodied or you're extremely disabled.
Right.
It's like, well, where's all the invisible disabilities in that middle ground that we're often missing?
Yeah. I think we lost your video feed, but that is okay. So I think that that's something that a lot of people don't recognize, because you can't see diabetes either. And we don't question when someone says, "Oh, I'm diabetic." We accept them. We accept their word. Like, "Oh, that person's diabetic." Got it. Mm-hmm. You can't see most disabilities. Depression is one of the leading causes of disability claims. That is completely invisible. Sometimes you don't even know. Sometimes there aren't even symptoms that you can see if you've interacted with someone. Sometimes there are. Sometimes it's more clear to the outside world. But in some cases, you can't tell. And so I agree. I wish that people would just have a little more understanding, a little more compassion, a little more empathy to understand that you can't see some disabilities. But that doesn't mean that they're not there, and it doesn't mean that they're not affecting your life. So I think that that's wonderful. Well, I'm going to open it up to anything you feel like we haven't talked about. Guys, if y'all have any questions to put into the chat, go ahead and pop them in. One last chance here. But Aunia, if there's anything that you feel like we didn't talk about, references, resources, I'll put your socials one more time in the chat as well. But I'll just give you the floor for a little while.
Well, I think kind of on the topic of what we were talking about, I think there's also something that I didn't understand where people that are visually disabled experience, because I'm not, so I haven't had that experience, And I have a friend of mine who's in a wheelchair, and it's the first person I've been friends with that has been in a wheelchair that is a friend, and just learning so much about their experience. For example, people would talk down to her, lean over, bend over, talk to her like she's a little kid, talk to the person that's, wheeling her around like she's not a human being. And so I think that's the other thing that I feel is just as important as being aware that there are tons of people, even sitting in your own office, in your own business, in a bookstore you're in a grocery store you're in. I mean, I think it's like 1 in 4 people, are dealing with something. And, but then people that are visually disabled are like, they can't get away from it. Like they're human beings, and I've definitely been a person who, like I said, I have been around a lot of people with disabilities. I've worked within groups that have worked with severely disabled people. And there's been a lot of fear and uncomfortability of like, what do you do? How do you react? What do you say? And the problem with that is that we've just not made it normal, right? Like I'm working very hard with trying to normalize disabled people being visually represented in advertising and marketing. Although, because I had this question on a podcast quite a while ago, is like, well, but how do you represent people that aren't disabled? Because if you're putting somebody in a wheelchair or whatever. And truly, when you represent those that are visually disabled, you are representing people who are not visually disabled. But people want to be treated like they want to be talked to and treated normally. So they had this initiative called Look Me in the Eye. Right? Like I'm a human being. And it's sometimes scary. It's truly factual and inhuman to be around somebody who looks different than you or acts different than you in maybe an extreme manner, or behaviors or how they move through the world is scary. We are programmed as human beings to notice things that are not normal for us and see them as potentially dangerous to keep us from dying. Right? But the more that we experience and we share people that are disabled within the normalcy of advertising, movies, things like that, the less it's going to be weird. And most of the time, people that are suffering so visually obvious, they just want to be treated like human beings. Talk to me like a grown adult woman, right? Like, and it gets in these weird spaces where people want to help somebody, let's say in a wheelchair, try to reach something. But then the person wants to like, I'll do it myself because I want to be looked at as an able. And then we get in these weird circumstances. Well, how do we communicate? Hey there, I'm seeing that you're having a difficult time reaching that. Is that something I can help you with? Or would you prefer to do that on your own? Right? Creating this sense of, self for a person. Because just because somebody's a disabled person doesn't mean they're not a human being, and they're often just they can't live their life not seeing it. And that's another reason why I feel like I advocate, because I can mask. I can completely mask. No one would have a clue. And that makes my life easy. Right? So why not speak up? Why not do that? Because there's plenty of other people who don't have the luxury of not being like, that's just what I am every day. And somebody's going to talk down to me. Someone's going to treat me like crap. Somebody's going to take my parking spot, because, they don't understand what disabilities mean. There's often these preconceived judgments of what's happening rather than a curiosity and questioning and dialoguing with somebody to learn what their needs are or learn their story. Right. So, yeah, it's tough.
I feel like kids have an innate curiosity to ask people, hey, what happened? Why are you in a wheelchair or whatever? And adults are so fast to just quash that and say like, no, don't ask that question. Like we don't ask that question. But like, why not? They're a person, if someone's pregnant and visibly pregnant and you ask about their baby, that's not wrong. Yeah, I think pregnancy should be looked at as a disability. Let me tell you. Sometimes
I agree.
No. Having been pregnant a couple times, it's not fun. But yeah, I mean, just meeting someone where they are and asking, how can I help you? That's something that I work on with my kids, is just saying, what do you need? You need me to listen? Do you need me to intervene? Do you need me to advise? Like, what is it you're after here? I can just listen. You can just rant. That's fine. I can give you advice. I don't have to get involved. I can go to bat for you if you need me to go to bat for you. And letting them dictate that, and then change their mind if they want to, but letting anyone dictate that. Say, hey, can I help you with this? Do you want me to help you with this? It can change the conversation so quickly. It can just change.
You want to be nice,
yes,
right? Like,
yeah.
people want to do things, and actually it kind of comes off as you don't think somebody can do it themselves, right? But you as a human being are like, well, this person, I'm seeing them visually struggling here, so I'm just going to go and intervene.
Right.
And, we got to think about it like children. Are there, and obviously I'm not, associating disabled people with children, but it's really a functional way to create a conversation and allow people to have anonymity, allowing people to have a sense of self. And children is a great place that we do that, right? Like, parents try their very best to, when a kid is struggling with something, not to just go in and try to fix it, right? You got to let the kid problem solve. And you know what's unique about people with disabilities that people don't understand? We are the best problem solvers in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Because we live in an able-bodied world, so everything is a goddamn puzzle.
Right.
So we're already doing all the work of figuring it out. And believe me, I bet you we know how to do it better because we figured it out. Right? And it's not as, that's a superpower that people forget. They often, are like, well, maybe I want to help. And it's like, well, great. It's good in society to want to help, but it's also great in society not to enable people.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Enabling gets into a lot of trouble in a lot of spaces. The more that we empower people to be and see them as a full human being and allow them to ask or open that question of perhaps, could I be assistance to you? And if not, that's okay too. The better it gets, because no one wants everybody. I mean, like, no one wants to feel weak. No one wants to feel like, oh, now somebody wants to help me again because I'm in a wheelchair, like, no one wants that. People just want to be human beings. Like, leave me alone. Let me get my cereal myself, Plus,
it's just a good another way to ask for consent. It's so important. So important absolutely. in all aspects. So, well, thank you so much, Aunia, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time. This was a beautiful, beautiful conversation. Thank you for joining us on this powerful episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. I hope this conversation with Aunia has resonated with you as deeply as it has with me. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with just a few key takeaways. First and foremost, let's remember that disabilities and mental health challenges aren't always visible, and it's our duty to approach everyone with empathy, respect, and kindness. By asking how we can help and respecting their choices when they respond, we can create a more inclusive and compassionate society. Secondly, authenticity really is a superpower. Embrace your true self, whatever that may be, and remember that your best is defined by you and can change from day to day, and that's okay. Let go of comparisons, both to others and to your past self, and focus on being your best in the present moment. And lastly, let's work together to normalize the representation of disabled individuals in our world. From advertising to everyday interactions, let's make sure that everyone is seen as a full-fledged human being deserving of dignity and respect. If you found this episode inspiring and insightful, please consider sharing it with one friend, one family member, one colleague. Together, we can really raise awareness and create positive change. And any interaction, a like, a subscribe, a review can really help reach more people. Stay tuned for more thought-provoking episodes, and if you have any topics or guests you'd like to see on the show, feel free to reach out to me directly. Your feedback is invaluable, and I love, love, love hearing from listeners and folks in the community. Thank you for your continued support, and remember, understanding unseen challenges is the first step toward a more inclusive and compassionate world. Until next time, take care, be kind, and stay authentic.